written about what women have to do better, what women have to do to get a man. And I said, I'm not writing that book. I said, this is about what men got to do better. We're the ones that aren't always, we're saying one thing and doing another. We're the ones that sometimes manipulate, even when we may not want to, we do it. And I said, okay, well, why is that? Why do we behave that way? So I had to take the position in the book that if you are a man thinking that I'm going to be pointing the finger at you or another woman, I'm not doing that. As a matter of fact, as you were, since you read, you talked about the introduction, I had to go inside to myself and say, okay, well, wow, this is the realest book because I had to be the most truthful, the most transparent, the most honest. And I can't write and encourage, anyone that knows what I do or who I am to be truthful and transparent. I'm not doing the same thing. So as a man, it requires me to look in the mirror and make some decisions. Who am I? What are my struggles? Why do I struggle? Where do they come from? And so I really had to go back into my history, and I'll come to the dog analogy and why I use that in a minute. I talk about in the book that, I discovered in my teenage years, my father passed away when I was 9 years old. He died of a heart attack when he was 36. And he was an alcoholic the majority of his life. And so when he passed away, it was tragic. And I didn't want to go to the funeral. It was so painful for me. And so that left my mother and my grandmother and her 7 sisters to basically raise me and my brothers. And it was in my teenage years where I saw a picture at one of my family members' houses. And in that picture was my mother, it was this female family member, and it was my father sitting on a bed. And my mother looked really unhappy, really mad. And my father and this female family member were smiling. And even as a teenager, I said, what's going on in this picture? What's happening? And people didn't want to tell me. And eventually, someone in my family told me. And they told me that my father had cheated on my mother with that female family member in the picture. So, what it did was it rocked my world. As a teenager, if my dad could not be faithful, well, do I have a shot? Do I even have a, and that's when I began to ask the question, do men cheat? Well, can a man be faithful? And the majority of women in my family would say no. They would say, 99% of all men cheat. And I was like, what do you mean? Why? And so as a teenager, I became almost obsessed. What is going on in us? What's wrong with us? And then, as I began to look deeper into me, I said, aha, here's the problem. It's lust. We have this impulse, we have these urges, we have these desires that are unhealthy, that are unholy, that are destructive. And here's the problem. Not only do we have it, we don't talk about it. We suppress it.
And we rationalize it.
And we rationalize. I talk about that in the book. Explanation, rationalization, normalization. So when I began to actually try to articulate what lust feels like, the best way I could describe it was like an untrained dog. So it's not about, I say in the introduction, men are not dogs, right? But I think that analogy, and I love to use metaphors, I use it to describe how to get control and how to articulate the problem. But that's how it feels. It feels like there's this animal thing in us that lust makes us feel like. And that's impulse driven, that's pleasure driven, that doesn't want discipline, that doesn't want accountability, that just wants to do what it wants to do whenever it wants to do it. And I felt using the analogy of mastering the dog was a great way to say, here's the problem, but here's how we can get control. Because then through that analogy, you get it. You're like, oh, got it. Here are the commands. Everyone's a dog. People are a dog owner, but everyone's a dog master, right? If I don't master this dog will master me. So once I started unpacking the analogy, it worked. And that's why I used it, And it never was it intended to demonize or vilify men in any regard. Because I talk about my own truth. I say, I'm not saying men have dogs. I say, I have one, right? I struggle. Here's my struggle. Here's why I struggle. And here's what I do about it every day.
Now we also talk about,
we know we've done things that make us not like who looks back at us. And we're guilty. I should have been a better person in this situation. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have said that. And that guilt leads to shame, where we fundamentally start not to like ourselves because some of the things we've done, things we did, and people don't even always know.
right.
But we know you're not as good as you think you are. That's what we say to ourselves. And so guilt and shame creates a really destructive internal dialogue where we begin to devalue ourselves, we begin to lower our self-worth, and ultimately what happens is when we deal with guilt and shame so much, we begin to live at a level less than what we're actually worth. And then we make decisions on that level. A lot of times people say, well, why is that person dating somebody that clearly isn't on their level? A lot of it has to do with guilt and shame. because they don't feel worthy of someone on their level for whatever reason. So this is why I talk about guilt and shame, and that we have to learn to forgive ourselves. You know, we have to learn to say, you know, I wish that hadn't happened. It did. I'm not going to judge myself, but I'm going to work on doing better. Because all of us, we all fall short. All of us struggle. And when we have guilt and shame, we think that what we have done is worse than what anybody else has done. And a lot of times we just have to say, yeah, it's wrong, I'm going to make it right. But what I'm not going to do is allow guilt and shame to fester in such a degree where I cannot live or breathe. And that's what guilt and shame can do. So how do we make it right? Do we tell the other person depending on what we did? I believe that it's important. I believe that we have to tell the truth. And one of the ways to take the sting and the power out of guilt and shame is to express it. Here's what I did. I gotta come clean.
You know, I've read places that
Honesty is the best policy. I do. I really do. Because anybody seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the old school one? Gene Wilder, right? Isn't that a good movie? Well, here's the thing. It kind of deals with that, right? They went and ate something they weren't supposed to eat. And they thought they got away with it. Until the end. And that's why whatever we do, and we think no one else knows, what is done in the dark will come to light.
Come on, somebody.
It's better to come clean, take ownership and accountability and responsibility for it, and whatever's going to come with that, take it. Versus living in the shadows and hiding and hoping that never one day will it come out. That to me is a much harder place to live than living on the street of truth, even though that's a difficult one. You know, cheating is about trust. And are you violating the trust and the sanctity of the relationship? So cheating isn't always something physical. It can also be emotional. You know, I talk about this in the book. I have to safeguard your relationship. You know, you can't allow anyone else other than your significant other to meet your emotional needs. Absolutely. And because what happens is if you cannot be 100% in your relationship, that percentage you cannot be is a liability for someone else to come and to meet that even if you don't want it. And so in a relationship, it's so important. Part of the safeguard is to identify what works for us. And if you step outside of that, that is a violation. Mm-hmm. So part of it is having an understanding and then holding each other accountable to that understanding. And this is why communication is so important. Because sometimes everyone has a different idea of what is and what isn't. That's why we got to talk. We got to say, okay, hey, what works for us? So going to this issue of porn and strip clubs and whatnot, at the end of the day, when someone does in their relationship, I'm not going to take a position in judging. I'm not going to do that. We spend too much time judging other people, telling people what they should and shouldn't do. If you are two consenting adults and that's what you choose to do, at the end of the day, that's your business. My point of view on it is that strip clubs and pornography feed the dog. They feed the dog. The more you feed it, the stronger it gets, even if you feed it in the confines of a committed relationship. Because those things, in everyone, it affects differently. But a lot of times, it starts you going down a slippery slope where nothing is enough. Yes. You know, you can't go to the strip club enough. You can't make it rain enough. You can't see, it's like you see the one thing, you say, oh man, I can't believe I've seen that. Now you want to see something. And at a certain point, your appetite grows so much that even if the confines of your commitment is not enough.
Chris Rock calls that the perfect porn cocktail.
For women in the audience, has anyone been in the situation Tasha is articulating where you may have been with someone but you were afraid to kind of bring up what you were?
I think it's more people, but y'all distract.
But it's okay. They clap in their spirit. They clap on the inside. I heard y'all say amen on the inside. Here's what I fundamentally believe. That where we can go really into a dangerous place in relationships is when we have expectations that we have not voiced. Everyone has a different idea of what they want when they want it. So when I go into a relationship and I have a previous unspoken expectation of how this man can operate or should operate. Well, if he's in love, he'll do this. Well, that may look differently. He may agree with you, but how that looks and how he does it may be different than your expectation of how he should do it. But when you've never expressed to him what the expectation is, what happens is you have an unspoken expectation. The person never got a chance to say, yes, I can meet that expectation. And then not only do they not get a chance to meet it, you didn't judge them because they didn't meet it. and you never had a conversation. And then you're frustrated and you're mad and you're angry, and he's like, what's going on? You should know what's going on. Well, I can read your mind. So it's so important to, for the women in the house, and I'll talk to the men as well, to the women in the house, not to be afraid or feel like you're pushing the situation or pressing the situation about asking where you're going. All of us have the Uber or Lyft app on our phone. When you call that Uber or Lyft, when you get in that car, you make sure that you are the person that you have called the Uber and that they're going to where you want to be. If you get into an Uber that's going the wrong direction, what do? You get out the car. You don't sit there and wait. Well, I hope they're going to end up in the right place. It's the same thing for a relationship. Find out where you're going and not going where you want to go. Say, I love you, but I got to go. Because there's somebody else out there going where I want to go. I don't want to wait no more time than you go where I want to go. Because I think that as men, when we can really be honest with our deep need for love, and then when that love is nurtured by the woman in our life, we can become something we never thought we could be. And so I put that in there because so often, when you're in a relationship or you're in a marriage with someone, especially when, and again, as men, we can do a lot of things. That may not be right. It doesn't mean we're cheating, we're stepping outside the relationship, right? But there could be some things, some rough edges that need to get sanded down. And that love of a woman saying, you know what? I know you're better than that. I'm not going to vilify you. I'm not going to demonize you. I'm going to affirm you.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak to that love in you. I know who you are.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, the right woman in our life can see who we are before we see.
Mm-hmm.
And when those words of affirmation come, it's almost like anything we would ever want to do that would hurt her, it's like, no.
No, exactly.
Here's why. Here's why. Is that, and I don't mean to sound this is crazy. Any woman can get on a pole and dance. Any woman, you can look and watch and see something physical. But very few will speak to the love in you. And that's when you're like, I have to master this because I need her and I don't want to hurt her.
Yeah.
And so it's so important for us as men to admit that we need it. We don't know how to love, but we need it. And for women, even when you, because a lot of times what happens is, as men, we put women through so much in relationships that so many women have PTSD. Yes. It's true. It's true. PTSD from relationships. So why is that important? Here's why this is important. Because when you're in a situation with the right man, he could have still done something that reminded you what the wrong man did. And as a result, you may not react to what the right man has done. You're still reacting to what the wrong man did, even though the wrong man ain't here. You're dealing with the right man. So it's so important to remember that this man didn't do that. And even though it may not have been the right thing, when you approach him the right way, that love in him will grow. That master in him will come forward. And so I wanted to put that in the book to show that in a relationship, words of affirmation are important, and speaking in that way can be transformative. I know, the things that sometimes I've said or done, with Megan, and sometimes she'll call me on it, be like, yo, why'd you say that? And the way I didn't like the way you talk to me, and as a man, sometimes I want to get indignant, but there are other times where she'll be like, babe, look, I know what you intended, but here's what I think you could do. Yeah. And that tenderness and that tone. It's like, yo, I ain't going nowhere, right? Hey, what you need? Because that is so hard to get. It's so hard to get. It goes beyond the physical. It goes beyond the emotional. It becomes spiritual. That's right.
So, Bob, before we open up for questions.
Be in touch with how you feel in your spirit. Your peace is your barometer. And so, you can still have peace even though you're being patient with what you want to see happen and develop in the relationship. But as that peace begins to get challenged and it begins to erode, where you no longer feel settled in your spirit, staying in a situation that is not bringing you what you need, that's a good sign that it may be time to either for something massive to change or you got to move on. So you've got to be in touch with your peace. How do you really feel? And there are a lot of times you can be long-suffering and you're like, you know what, I have peace in this because I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. And yes, I see things I want to see differently. And we're working on this and we're going to counseling for that. And you feel peace about it. You're like, it's not easy, but I still feel peace that this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
But as that peace begins to go, you've got to be in touch with that. Because that's going to tell us when it's time to move or do something very different.
Yeah, because we don't want to be used to be.
Part of our culture, because we do live in a culture that thrives on vice. And I believe that vice corrupts. So what happens is, you know, the culture says, oh, this type of man is sexy.
Right.
You know, he wears this type of clothes, he has this type of swag, and, you know, he does all these things, right? So a lot of times when, in my experience, because I had the same issue you had, same thing. And just so you know, it ended great. Right? Because what happens is, it's like, I am responsible. I do take care of myself. I show up to work on time. You know, I do dress a certain way. And a lot of women were like, oh, that's not sexy.
It's not the label about that, by the way.
No, I know. But from the
Yeah.
outside, in terms of what is the conditioning. So a lot of times the conditioning is that the dog in a man is sexy. The master is boring. Okay? So for me, a lot of women are like, oh man, he's too square. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't club, or any of that. So there's a tendency for me as a man to say, am I going to adjust how I feel and who I am to fit into a woman who doesn't get me to begin with, limited understanding that who she's passing over today, she will be begging for. So what I would say to you, my brother, is keep being honest, keep having integrity, keep playing the Jodeci, keep taking out the trash, and I guarantee you, there is going to be a woman that is going to appreciate you more than you could ever imagine. I guarantee it. Managing. You know, one of the things I say about managing is first, it's okay to acknowledge that you have an urge. Right. Okay. Exactly. See, I was raised in the church. You know, I love the church. I still go to church today. But in the church, they don't talk about this. Okay, you can be holy, but what happens when you're holy and one? Come on, now, don't tell y'all. Get one on me now. So often, we start to get an urge, and because we aren't taught how to deal with it, we start to go crazy. You know, every urge does not have to be, you have to do something about it. The best thing to do about an urge is acknowledge that it's there. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm feeling this. Now, here's what you said, is it what's holy and what's not, right? So in the confines of a marriage, you know, when you start to feel a certain way, you're right, that horniness is going to come on you, you may want to do something. The issue is what you choose to do about it and who you choose to do it with. That's where lust can manipulate and make you say, hey, I'm horny even though I'm married or I'm in a relationship. This person over here wants to satisfy that with no conditions, so I'm going to let that happen. No, I am going to wait until it's the right environment, until I'm married, until I'm home. You know what I'm saying? So it's about understanding these feelings are going to come, not judging them, but also putting ourselves in a process where we deal with them in a healthy way, so that they don't become destructive to us and everything that we stand for. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, that's